Good evening, Drew.
It's a miracle that everything works.
I was looking at the dock and looking at the clock and looking at the dock and going, uh-oh. I hope everything's okay.
Well, that was you can see here that I didn't add an update, delete updates. I sort of led a hero's journey in our dock.
You did, yes.
But we'll get there. We'll get there. We have some TV stuff to talk about first.
We do.
And I think we'll break up. I think the way you sort of have this in here is good because I want to save the Severance stuff for last because we can do the spoiler thing. But just a real quick thing to talk about here because I found this really interesting. And I know that this isn't the first time somebody has done this, but Paul, you and I are both Plex users.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Tell us what Plex did.
So I haven't tried this yet, Drew. Have you tried this?
I have tried it.
Okay. I have not tried it. But so what? Okay. So Plex kind of has this perception, I think, out in the world. It's a place where you put pirated stuff to watch.
Well, I mean, you didn't have to come right out and say it.
But that's the perception, right? People think that, that's what Plex is for. I personally put things that I both ripped from like DVDs and Blu-rays that I owned and stuff I download on YouTube on there. But basically, it's a place that if you have media that you've acquired, whoever means, you can put it somewhere and Plex can stream it, right? You can put a Plex app on your TV and boom, magic happens. They also have some free ad supported stuff. But that's not important. What they did is I think they're trying to I don't know what the end game for this is, Drew, besides getting people to use Plex and maybe give them money.
Well,
but they have all this metadata about all this television, all this TV stuff, right? They know a lot about what's available to watch. So what they did is they kind of put together a one-stop shop for you to discover and track things to watch across multiple streaming services, right? You can't watch it through there, but you can track things. In a lot of cases, you can launch the application from Plex, I think.
Yes. So I'm just going to come out and say it. I am the target customer for this feature.
Okay.
And here's why. So in our house, we have in the living room where I do most of my TV watching an Apple TV. And then in the bedroom, we have a Roku. Downstairs, we have a Roku. I'm in the process of sort of trying to transition those to Apple TVs just because I like them and they're 4K. And I mean, they're not outrageously expensive for what they are.
Yeah.
Dolby Vision, the whole deal, right? So for me, when I sit down to watch TV, I sometimes don't know what I want to watch until I see it. So what I do is I use the god-awful terrible remote and I go to Netflix or I'll go to Hulu or I'll go to MyPlex or I'll go to somewhere and I'll just sort of flit around in there until I see something yeah, I could kind of just veg out and watch this, or I haven't seen this before, I'll watch this. The problem is I'm constantly flipping between apps, right? Each app has its own look and feel. Each app has its own interface and whatever. I'm not that much of a snob when it comes to it, but I love this feature specifically on Apple TV because I open Plex and I have access to the stuff that I've always had access to in Plex, like my TV shows. I also do pictures and podcasts on there sometimes. Just because I have a library of pictures of my dog and places I visited that aren't I actually did a pretty good job of taking some pictures, humble brag. But so I have all that on my Plex. What I really like about this feature is it does exactly what you said. So when I'm in there, it kind of knows what I watch and what I like, and it will highlight shows and things. And I think it does this. I don't know the algorithm that Plex uses to do this, but it definitely knows what's in my Plex library. It knows what actors are in there. It knows what genres I have. You're right. It's all metadata, right? So it sort of makes suggestions. And I can, if I see oh, here's a Rambo movie that you haven't seen, Drew. Like it'll like I can hit the button and it'll tell me what it's on. And just with the click of that button, it'll flip me over to the other app and I can start watching it. Right. So it sort of acts as like a glorified jump pad for everything that I have. And I'm sad that this doesn't work on Hulu yet. Although I haven't tried it for a while, but I don't think it works on Hulu yet. The article that I'm going to put in the show notes specifically calls out that it doesn't work on Hulu, but I think they're working through that because this is something that's been around for, I think, the start of this month, the start of March. But I like it. I like it. I think it's a really good thing. I know there are other services and things that will do this, but since I'm already sort of in the Plex universe, the Plex lifestyle as we call it, I think it works great.
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't looked at it yet, but it's on my list of things to check out.
All right. Now, I'm excited for this next topic.
Okay.
Because you don't sound excited for this.
No, I'm excited on the inside. It's the mind is willing, the body is weak. I'm not feeling the best today.
Oh, buddy, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. I'm trying to work through it and bring all the enthusiasm that I need.
Well, trust me, when we get to this next topic, you can sit back and laugh, and I promise you, laughter is the best medicine.
I will. Okay, so I got a new TV for my living room.
Yep.
It's the one that I kind of had my eye on. I got it for a heck of a good deal. I got the Samsung QN90A, which is a horrible name. It's Samsung's, they call it Neo QLED. It's a mini LED backlit television.
Okay.
I really wanted an OLED television, but the room that I'm in, for reasons that are complicated, is usually a very bright room. There's lots of lights and sun coming into the room. So I wanted something that was a little bit brighter than an OLED to fight the sun, and that had good glare reduction, a wide angle. And also, I was really looking for a television that we kind of have this big honkin' IKEA entertainment center thing that just like surrounds the television. And I needed something to fit inside of there. This fits like nearly like almost perfect fit level. It's like maybe like a quarter of an inch clearance on either side. It's absolutely perfect. It's also tall enough that I can still put my sound bar underneath it and not block any of the television. It's perfect. I absolutely love this television. It's great. I'm happy. Yes, I know people are like, OLEDs are better. I couldn't put an OLED in this room. I would never be able to see it. It's great, Drew. It's great. I love the television. But while I was, replacing the television, it kind of gives you a chance to, reflect and look what's hooked up in your entertainment center. It's an end of an era, Drew. And you know what that era is?
Uh-oh.
There is no more Logitech Harmony remote in my living room.
Oh,
it's gone.
buddy.
It's gone. It's gone. I put it away. I don't.
No.
I don't need it anymore.
Listen, I have chided you. I've chided you for this. And okay, whatever. I'm not here to totally yuck your yum. But why? Why did you get rid of it?
So, with the old television, when I got the Apple TV 4K with the new fancy Siri remote, I was like, I like this remote. I'm going to give it a try. So at that point, I kind of hooked up all of the HDMI CEC, the stuff that allows it to control other devices. And that's worked really well for me since. So I've been basically living the Apple TV remote lifestyle. Because really, when I go to hit TV, when I watch TV, that's what I'm doing. I'm watching through my Apple TV. I'm not doing anything else.
Sure.
So it works great. I don't have any problems with it. So I just kept that rolling forward, and I was like, you know what? I haven't literally touched this Harmony remote for months since I've done this. And since I was back there fiddling with wires, I just unplugged it and fished all the cables out and put it in a box.
Well,
it's done.
I'm a little torn on how to react to that because I think, first of all, I do think you're making the right decision.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I know how important that is to you. I know how much you like that software, but it's
a product that's dead anyway because Logitech's not going to make any more of them. And yeah.
Don't be sad that it's gone. Be happy that it happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you're right. It's a dead product. Like, you don't have to go through the rigmarole of like making it work on your Mac anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So okay. Now I have questions about the TV though. So what size did you get?
65 inches.
65 whole damn inches.
Mm-hmm.
Damn. Now you said, okay, I'm sorry. I have to ask because I'm going to be buying some additional TVs for my house. I probably won't get anything as nice as this for some of the rooms that I'm going to put these TVs in, but I do have to ask you. You said you got a heck of a deal on it. Where do you shop for your TVs?
I got this particular TV from Woot.
From Woot.
Well, so here's what's happening, Drew. The QN90B, the 2022 model, just came out.
So this is the previous model.
This is the previous model, and really, like, the panel is it's the same panel. They up on the new model. There's the major differences are the new model. I think there's one thing it supports that the old model don't. And I can't remember what it is, but it wasn't important to me. The new model has some updated software, which I think is uglier. And the biggest thing, which actually kind of hurts a little bit, on the B, the 2022 model, all of the HDMI ports are HDMI 2.1. We're on the A, only one is. But I got a heck of a deal on it. Absolutely heck of it. I think they're just like,
everything must
go.
Well, okay, so let me ask you then.
I had how I actually found it was I put in a alert on Slick Deals, and it sent me an email saying, "Hey, this is available," and then I bought it.
Okay, so let me. Okay, so you mentioned that. So you mentioned one of the differences between the new model and the old model. HDMI 2.1. What devices in your house right now are HDMI 2.1?
None, absolutely. Oh, the television.
Okay, but like the PlayStation 5 isn't.
Oh, I don't know. Is it? But
I don't know. I'm asking.
It's not hooked up to. It might be. Let's think. And why? PS5. What? Okay, so the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox both have it. I think the big thing is like variable refresh rates.
Correct.
That it supports. For starters, I don't give a crap about that. And B, the PlayStation's hooked up to another TV upstairs. It'll never be attached to this television, so it was fine for me. All things being equal, I would have bought the television with all HDMI 2.1 ports. But
sure,
the price
was too good.
The price was too good, and I was perfectly fine with just. I have one. Like it's there's one port on there that supports it. So in a pinch, I'll just use that. But yeah.
So I'm actually looking here because I didn't know this, but the Apple TV 4K is also HDMI 2.1.
Well, lucky for me, that's the port I plugged it into.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. The Apple TV 4K HDMI 2.1 has a number 4. Support for up to 60K, or sorry, 60K. Support up to 4K 60 FPS HDR video. Output and audio return channel ARC or ERC only. Requires HDCP when playing protected content and compatible TV receiver. So, yeah. So good news for you. If that's the only HDMI 2.1 device you're going to plug into it, then great.
Yeah.
Great.
In fact, right now it's the only thing plugged into it besides my sound bar through HDMI ARC. But
right.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
It's a different story.
Now. You have your gaming TV upstairs. You got this new you have this new TV downstairs.
Uh-huh.
Which TV looks better?
Oh, the new one, the Samsung It's night and day.
But didn't you get like a nice like OLED?
I did. No, it's not. It's not OLED.
It's not
the
OLED.
one upstairs was not OLED. It's just a regular LED panel. I mean, the technology is better, right? And plus, the Samsung is mini LED, so it's just got more like LEDs to control. Turn on and off. It's the same technology that's in the new MacBook Pros, I think.
Yeah.
The dynamic range is better. It looks really good. I'm super happy with it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm happy for you. You've been sort of waiting to get that, so I'm happy for you.
Yeah, it's done.
It's done. All right. So, let's dive into a tale of woe. And that could only mean one thing. It's time for Drew's Computer Corner.
Oh,
all right.
Tell me what happened, Drew.
I want to tell this story because I think there's a certain small percentage of our already small audience that loves to hear me complain about this type of stuff.
I love it. This is my favorite part of the whole thing. This is why I do the show.
Okay. So, again, if you're newer here, Drew's Computer Corner is where I talk about my problems messing with my computer. Paul does not like to build PCs anymore. He will do it for his son because he's a good dad, but he won't do it for himself. He's a console boy for all the reasons I'm about to talk about right now. Okay. So, and again, if you're not super technical or you're not a big nerd like me, I'm going to try to keep this. In order to tell this story right, there's a lot of detail and nuance that has to go into this, but I don't want to like make it a complete nerdy thing.
No.
Okay?
Can I ask one question before we get started?
Sure.
Okay, this is basically your latest incarnation of your computer with that new fancy i9 chip that you bought.
So to level set, right? Right now I have, if not counting my Mac, right, I have 3 PCs in my house, and they are like generational. So the AMD system that I had before this, it is now what is serving as what I call my streaming PC, and that is the PC that does all of my rendering and is connected to Twitch. So like it is in my back cellar, and like when I'm streaming or doing something on my computer, like I have video over HDMI, so like I use OBS on this machine and it like sends the signal to that computer, and then that's the one that encodes and sends to Twitch, so it's a little less intense on my computer when I'm gaming. So like I basically repurposed that hardware for that, and this computer that I'm talking on right now that is also my gaming computer is my Intel 12900K Big Little Alder Lake or whatever PC, and then there's a third computer that is a Linux box that acts as like a home media server and stuff like that. But this is the computer we're talking about. It's the most recent computer that I built, and it serves as sort of my gaming PC. Okay. So the root of this was I wanted to add additional storage to my computer.
Okay.
All right. Now, in terms
for more video games?
More video games and some other media stuff I've been doing.
Okay. Now, were you replacing like your boot drive or
no.
adding a new drive?
No, this was straight expansion. So at this point, I should probably like explain sort of the type of storage I'm talking about, because it's very easy to think of the canonical hard drive, but this is a very, very specific use case. So let me pull up something here that I want you to either look at. I think it's important for the show notes. Okay. This is the current motherboard that I have. It is made by Asus, which I'm not as angry at them today as I was earlier this week. Okay. But this is the motherboard that I chose to use. It is more on the enthusiast end, but at the lower end of the enthusiast end. It has several features that are really important. And if you're looking at the picture I sent up to you right now, there are very easily identifiable parts of this motherboard. Like you can clearly see where the processor goes. You can clearly see where the memory goes. And you can see the PCI expansion slots for like where you plug in your graphics cards and such. Now, the storage in question that we are talking about here is what we call M.2 storage. Okay. So it is the latest generation of SSDs. So if you're looking at like the evolution of hard drives, like when we were kids, we had the big 3.5-inch or sometimes 5.25 spinning rust, as we call them today, hard drives that clicked and clacked and made noise, right? Then we had SSDs, which got rid of all the mechanical pieces, or solid state drives, and those are still available today in 2.5-inch form factor. But they run on typically what we call a SATA, serial ATA interface, which, that interface determines how fast information travels to and from the drive. And the latest generation is what we call PCIe storage, which is based on this M.2 form factor. And they almost look like little RAM sticks, and that's essentially what they are. And what they do is they plug directly into your motherboard 99% of the time. And that 1% of the time is what we're going to be talking about here in a moment.
Okay.
But 99% of the time, these plug into your motherboard. Now,
where else would they go? I guess I should wait for the story.
Yeah, we're going to get there. But before we get to that part, we sort of need to understand that, basically, there are a number of factors that when you are doing this and you want to use this type of particular storage on a motherboard that supports it, and really any motherboard made in the last 5 years has at least one slot for these. Motherboards that you typically buy and build your PCs on will usually provide support from anywhere from 1 to sometimes 5 of these slots. Now, what's the difference? Well, there's two main differences. One, more expensive motherboards will typically have more spots available to put these drives. Now, in the one that I linked to you, this particular board has 3 PCIe slots. Okay, or PCIe M2 slots. Okay. Now, ignore the fact that it says 5 for just a minute. Okay, it has 3. It does not have 5. It has 3. Okay, so this particular board has 3. Now, if you're looking at the picture of the motherboard, you might be tempted to ask, well, where specifically are they? Well, we're going to get to that in a minute. Now, why does this one only have 3? Why do other motherboards have 2? Why do some have 5? Well, what it comes down to is there's 2 main factors that determine how many of these drives that can be supported. Now, number one is your processor architecture, because a lot of times the processor has dedicated what we call lanes for communicating for these different types of devices, whether they be your graphics cards, expansion cards, or hard drives. There are specific lanes dedicated like from the CPU directly to the storage. That reduces latency, it increases speed, and that's why we have different PCIe, what they call specifications. The current generation of PCIe slots is 5.0. There are very, very few drives that support PCIe 5.0. There are also very few motherboards that support PCIe 5.0. And I think, in fact, right now, the only way you can get that is to be on a latest generation Intel chip, which I am. This motherboard does support it. However, when you're accessing data through those lanes, you have less lanes available for other expansion cards. Now, when you're buying a processor, there is a way to tell how many lanes you will have available for your expansion cards. And this all comes down to memory bandwidth. With me so far?
I am.
Okay, great. Because you're a smart guy. I'm just trying to. This is all going to be very important here in a minute. Okay. Now, most consumer processors will cap out at like 20, 24. Some of the AMD ones cap out higher. And if you're like on a Threadripper or a high-end desktop processor, sometimes you will have 48 or even 60 lanes, which is why those have more PCIe slots that run at higher speeds. And can support multiple graphics cards, because those all take up the lanes. And if you don't have enough lanes to do everything, either something won't work right or everything will run slower so it can spread that bandwidth out across the appropriate lanes. Okay, so this motherboard has 3 slots for these drives. Now, when you're looking at the motherboard, it's not readily clear where they are, but I'm going to point it out to you. If you're looking at the picture of the motherboard, there's a giant silver square where the processor goes. Mm-hmm. Below that, there is something that looks like the number 14 with a little metal pipe coming out of it.
Yes.
That is a cover that acts as a heat sink for these drives, because these things can actually get a little bit warm. Okay. The higher, just like everything else, the higher the speed, the higher the voltage, the higher the heat. So the more the more electrons and ones and zeros that are flowing in and out of these things, the hotter they get. So there is actually a little metal heat pipe that makes contact with these things that is underneath that particular slot. Okay. And on this particular board, that is also the slot that supports PCIe 5.0. Now, to be clear, I have no PCIe 5.0 slots, but it is an M2 slot. You can use a slower drive in there, and it will function at the appropriate speed. Now, the other two slots for my PC for this storage is at the very, very bottom of the board. There is an additional very, very long piece of metal at the bottom of the board. And if you were to zoom in on that, it would say dual M.2 on it. And the way to sort of envision that is if you were to lift that off, the two drives basically touch tips in the middle of that thing. So like you plug one in on the left, you plug one in on the right, and they both sort of sit under that big piece of aluminum that also acts as a heatsink. Okay? So before all this started, I had 3 drives plugged into this thing. I had a 1 terabyte Crucial SSD that was a PCIe 4.0 spec. And this drive was really important to me because when I upgraded to AMD a couple years ago, that was the only way you could get PCIe 4.0. This was one of the first drives I had. It's blazingly fast. It's a great drive. Works like a champ. And that was my boot drive. And that lived in the slot at the top of the board, okay, underneath that huge heatsink. I had 2 other Samsung drives that are both roughly 500 gigs because SSDs have like, sometimes they'll be like 512, sometimes they'll be straight 500. And like the amount of usable you get is always less than that because of like overhead and partition tables and things like that. But anyway, those 2 drives lived under the ones underneath it. Okay. Now, this is where the story takes a little bit of a turn because the specifications of this thing says that it has 5 PCIe slots.
Okay, but there's only 3 on the board.
But there's only 3 on the board.
Okay.
Okay. So this is where the story takes a little bit of a turn.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find you a better picture of this. Why do I? Okay. On the link I sent you, if you are to scroll down a little bit, you get more. You get more pictures of the motherboard if you scroll further down.
Yep.
Okay. I want you to keep scrolling, and it's one of these websites. Actually, when you get to the PCIe performance section, it basically shows you where those drives are, like a little X-ray.
Okay.
vision.
Yep. I see that. Yep.
Okay. On that particular thing, it says with 1 PCIe and 5.0 2 slot and 2 PCIe 4. Learn more about the ROG Hyper M2 card.
Oh no!
All right.
Oh no!
Okay. So this particular motherboard, this is something that came with this motherboard because people realize like, hey, I want more storage. What this is, Paul, is this is an expansion card that has 2 more ports on it. So the idea is that you pop 2 more drives into this thing, and then you plug this card into one of your expansion slots on your motherboard. And you now have 5 drives.
Oh, does this card... I can't imagine this card comes with the motherboard.
It absolutely did.
Oh, it did?
It did.
Wow. Okay.
So again, all I had to do, theoretically, was go buy 2 more drives and put it in this thing. Now, I need to stop here and explain that there are a lot of asterisks that need to be appended to this particular setup. Number 1, in order for this technology to work, it uses something called PCIe bifurcation. And what that means is that what this card is doing is it is a full-length 8x PCIe card, meaning it is eating up 8 lanes, and it is designed to split the signal from that into the 2 drives. So instead of the card running at 8x, it's basically splitting the channels and sending 4 to one drive and 4 to the other. And it supports the PCIe 4.0 speed spec, so it should be very, very fast. This does not work unless it is plugged into the bottommost port of the motherboard. And again, for reasons I won't go super deep into, the reason for that is that particular port does not use the PCIe lanes of the processor. It uses a different set of ports and bandwidth that are available to the chipset itself, not necessarily to the processor. Again, it's very confusing, but the bottom line is like you're not going to exhaust your PCIe lanes with this particular setup. Now, if you were to plug this card into the port above it, only one of them would work because it doesn't have enough lanes to do what it needs to do. Okay.
Okay.
So I've had this card ever since I built this thing with the intention of always putting 2 drives in it. Well, I was finally at a place like budget-wise and I needed a treat. So I went to Micro Center this past weekend and I bought 2 additional M2 drives. Now listen, as somebody who builds computers pretty much on the regs, and I can say that like unironically, hard drives on the spectrum of things that can go wrong isn't really up there. It's not like a graphics card that maybe you don't have a power supply that's powerful enough to drive, or you trying to install a processor and bending a pin, or getting the wrong speed memory or something that isn't compatible with your computer. It's pretty benign, right? It's a couple screws and you pop it in and it's not a big deal. And add to the fact that really I'm not even touching the motherboard here, right? I'm just dropping 2 drives onto this card. I'm plugging the card in, screwing my case back together. We're calling it a day, right? So went to Micro Center and I bought 2 Western Digital hard drives. Why Western Digital? Well, Western Digital has made a few interesting, and I'll put a link to, let's see here. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah. This was the brand that I went with for this particular thing. I don't think they're particularly bad drives. They run a little hot, but all the reviews were pretty glowing. So I bought 2 of the 500 gigabyte ones.
This is what I got to put on my PlayStation 5.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. They're very solid drives, and they're very reasonably priced. So for like $160, $170 at Micro Center, in and out, no big deal. Get it home, crack open the seals, drop them in the card, screw the card back together because it's all held together with screws, and that thing acts as a giant heat sink. A very effective one, I might add. I slammed it back in the case. Hey, 2 drives showed up. Everything was looking great. Formatted the drives. Everything was good. However, what I noticed, and again, this is one of those Drew can't leave well enough alone type scenarios. I put everything back together and I was checking out everything to make sure, like, man, I really hope I didn't like exhaust my PCIe lanes, or maybe my graphics card is running at less bandwidth because I'm using my lanes. And sure enough, I checked the graphics card, and instead of running at PCIe 16, like 16 gigabytes a second of memory bandwidth, it's running at half speed.
Oh,
and I'm like,
that's no good.
And I'm like, shit. And I went back and I double checked. I reread everything, and I'm like, okay, why is this running only at 8x? So I stopped. I shut down. I pulled the card out. I restarted back up. It still says 8x, and I'm like, what is going on here? Well, I come to find out, right? If you go back to this page here, there's some very fine print, okay? And that is, if you have a hard drive plugged into that top M2 slot, it splits bandwidth with your graphics card slot.
So were you running at half speed the entire time?
The whole fucking time.
That's not good.
It's not good.
That's
now,
not good.
Why? So why is that not good? It's not good because, again, I spent more than $2,000 on my current graphics card. And this was before the crazy price crush, right? This is when these cards were relatively new and they were still hard to get, but the prices weren't through the roof. And listen, when you spend that much, you want to make sure that you're getting every last conceivable piece of like processing power out of it. Now, Now let's do some quick math here, Paul.
Okay.
I have, counting the card, 5 slots. But in order to get my PCIe 16 speed out of here, I need to take the card out of that slot.
Okay.
And I need to replace one of my existing hard drives. Now, bear in mind, right? Quick recap. The drive that I'm taking out of that slot is 1 terabyte. Okay. So if you were going to replace a hard drive, Paul, which one would you replace?
Well, you'd go for one of the small 500s.
One of the smaller, older 500s.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me, right?
What are the ones you had kind of in that bottom where they touch tips?
Okay. All right. Now,
right?
This is where I'm going to get really angry really quickly.
Uh-oh.
Because I no longer have this 1 terabyte drive.
Oh no, what happened?
All right. So,
did it go poof?
Nope.
No.
So here's what happened. So,
True.
I unscrewed the top thing and I pulled the drive out.
Mm-hmm.
I then unscrewed the bottom heatsink and pulled one of the drives out, and I popped this drive back in. Now, Paul, what you don't see here, and I want to make sure there's not a picture of it, is when you pop that bottom piece off.
Okay.
Hold on. I got to find a better picture of this. There has to be a better one. If you're looking at the motherboard head on, the drive on the right plugs in, and most M2 cards are 80 millimeters. So the screw that holds that thing on also is the retention screw of the hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
On the left-hand side, I put another 80 mil card in there. And there's plenty of room on the left-hand side to where there's actually a second retention screw under the heatsink. And then the other screw puts the heatsink back on. The drive that I replaced was on the right-hand side. So I pop the heatsink off. I take out the card on the right. I put the new one in. And I put the heatsink back on. I line up the screw holes, and I start screwing it in. But it's not screwing in.
Okay.
And the reason it wasn't is because I was slowly grinding a diode off the end of this particular hard drive.
Oh, no.
Because it butts up right against that screw. If it's not set correctly and you start screwing it in, there's these little tiny transistors on this thing. And I'll try to take a picture, and you can use it for show art if you want. But there's like these 5 little resistors or transistors there. And one has a giant hole where the screw was grinding it down.
Oh, no.
So it's dead. Dead.
No.
So instead of going to 2.5 terabytes, I was only going to go to 2. I was angry. I thought, this is really terrible design. Who thought of this? Why would you do this, Asus? Why would you make this thing hard to screw in? And not every SSD has this risk. I'm sure that if you have a less dense SSD or a smaller SSD, it's not a big deal. But I'll be honest, all the ones I have, this is a risk. So this is like really terrible design that you could basically like put a hole in your SSD. And actually, as I'm touching it and feeling it, I can feel more pieces of it like coming off in my fingers, and it's making me sad because I'm like sitting here fingering it. Title. Yep. Hold on. Okay. So casualty. So man down, right? So I'm like, okay, well, there's that. So I decided to cut my losses and put the original card that I just took out of there back in, taking extra caution to screw everything back in, boot it back up, and put the expansion card back in there. And everything looks good. The graphics card is now running at 16x. I still have 4 drives. Everything looks good. Now, I could have stopped here. Could have stopped right here.
Okay.
But I didn't.
Okay.
Because I had an ulterior motive here, Paul. And the idea here is with these 2 new drives, 2 new identical drives, we were going to RAID 0 them.
Ooh, brave.
Now, consumer RAID technology is dog shit. It just is, right? Like,
yeah.
if you have even a modicum of like system administrator experience, you have probably messed with RAIDs in a data center or RAIDs on like a NAS device or something where like the whole idea there for people who haven't done this is you can make multiple hard drives work together either for performance or data redundancy. So in case one of them fails, you have a backup of stuff, or you can basically technically double your data rate if you have 2 drives working together. And in a RAID 0 configuration, the 2 drives become 1. So instead of having 2 500 gig drives, I would have 1 terabyte drive running on this card.
Right.
So I looked up how to do it on this computer. This is an Intel-based system, so it's using Intel RAID drivers, which is a little bit better than like the NVIDIA story the AMD story, because AMD outsourced that to a third party. I think it's As Media as their controller, and I'm currently running a RAID in my streaming PC. It's a nightmare. But I found the way to do this, and I turned on RAID in the BIOS, and instantly it's like, oh, I don't know where your boot drive is. And I'm like, okay, I get it. It basically turns on, it basically changes up the communication. And like, I didn't have the driver installed ahead of time, but I was like, whatever, I'll just reformat and reinstall Windows and everything will be cool. So I created a RAID 0 array of my 2 new drives that are on my card. I left the other 2 drives alone. I reformatted everything, booted up, selected the appropriate driver so Windows could install. Like, everything's looking okay. Get Windows installed. I start doing updates. I start installing things, and everything's working pretty much how I expect it to work. But then I install some more software and I do a reboot, and my computer starts running like dog shit. Like the Windows, like it's taking like 2 minutes to boot into Windows. Like something's not right. So I shut down, I reboot, happens again. When it finally does get into Windows, like things are very strange. Like I'm getting all sorts of weird errors in my event viewer. And at that point, it's like, it could be so many different things, right? It could be the RAID driver. It could be the hard drives. It could be a conflict somewhere. It could be Windows 11 for all I know, right? Because this is Windows 11. It's not Windows 10. Like maybe these drivers aren't working great with Windows 11. Like that's a real possibility. Like there's a million different ways that this can go wrong. But through hours and hours and hours of agonizing troubleshooting, I'm just like, clearly RAID is not going to work for me on this card. So I decided that I'm going to cut my losses and I'm just going to go back to having 4 drives. RAID was a dream, but at least I have more space than when I started. Not as much as I wanted, but I still have more
Right.
than when I started, right? I could still come out ahead here. So I go back into BIOS, disable everything, reinstall Windows yet again, boot back up, and I decide to install Windows on one of my existing drives. Everything is showing up correctly. I have multiple drives. I format them. I start installing my games again, and everything looks good. And everything looked good for about a day. Like I had to eventually calm down, right? That was the point where I sort of hit the hero arc of, okay, well, everything's back and working again. I only lost 1 hard drive in the bargain. I don't get to have RAID. I'm basically telling myself that it's going to be okay. But it's not okay. Because what I start experiencing is occasionally on a boot, one of my new hard drives just doesn't show up.
Oh no.
And I eventually get to at first it appears to be random, but I eventually figured out I was able to get to a point, like a good troubleshooter can, where I could get repeatable scenarios where one of the hard drives on they're calling it the hypercard, which means something completely different to me growing up with an Apple computer.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's called the hypercard that Asus makes. But I was able to successfully recreate the issue 100% of the time. And it goes a little something like this. From a cold boot, when the computer would start up, one of the drives would just be missing. A reboot fixed it.
Huh.
A warm boot where I would shut down the computer and boot it up, one of the drives would be missing. Reboot would fix it. I could completely shut down the computer from a cold boot. If I went into BIOS, the drive showed up, Windows would boot, it'd be fine. Like there was something happening with the boot to where like both of these drives weren't fully being recognized before the Windows boot manager took over, and something was causing it to freak out. So I tinkered with it for a few days. I was able to get to where it was repeatable. And then I sort of like took a giant step back and look at my situation. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't acceptable. Like, why are you doing this? So I did some research and I decided that I was going to basically short circuit some troubleshooting. And I was going to try to eliminate the drives from the scenario. So I swapped the drives on the card, same scenario, right? So it wasn't like I had one bad drive. There was obviously something either wrong with my card or something wrong with the drives. So I took the drives back out, took them to Micro Center, exchanged them for some Samsungs, put them in, and I haven't had a problem since.
Really?
Yep. So now, right, I am at the bargaining, I'm at the reasoning state of my journey where it's like, okay, things are good, things are working. Do I attempt to do RAID again? And after having done 4 separate OS installs this week, I don't have it in me to do it again. So
right, yeah, exactly.
So the next time I am at a point where I'm feeling like I'm ready for like a full system refresh, which I do probably every 6 months anyway, just I don't know, because whatever. I will probably attempt the raid again, but there's just so many different steps to this story, and I'm still sad that I lost an entire hard drive in this because again, of all the mucking about I've done with computers, like putting like controlled water in a computer and messing with graphics cards and taking off and putting on of cooling systems and all the other dumb shit I've done with my computer, like a hard drive install should not be something that fucks me up. And yet here I am. So
right.
Let that be a lesson to you. And like there, and here's the other thing, right? And here's the other thing where it's like a giant middle finger to Asus. It is impossible to find support for this particular card. If you go online and you search for this, you will not find this particular part number. What you will find is another version of this card that they make that supports up to 4 SSDs on it. And that has its own, like, if you have X chipset and Y processor, like here's the configuration you need to use type thing. But yeah, it was really hard to find support articles for this. It was hard to find everything. Like I did BIOS updates, I did firmware flashes of hard drives, like all the stuff that you just shouldn't have to do, and all the reasons that you can sit smug and tell me why your console's better than me. Yeah, you win this round. You win this round, Paul, because damn, Paul, damn.
Oh, I'm sorry, Drew.
It's okay. We're back at it. Like I said, we're back at a steady state now. Knock on wood, everything seems to be working a little bit better. But that was my Computer Corner update for this time, and I'm sure there'll be another one because sooner or later I'll want to mess with this again. But I'm just glad that everything is working again.
Yeah, I'm glad the story had a sort of happy ending.
Yeah,
happy-ish. I'm glad your computer's working.
It's working, and like the drives aren't disappearing. Like, and it was weird too because like Steam would start and like my library would be half missing because the drive wasn't there.
Right.
Like it wasn't impacting the function of the OS because I didn't install the OS on that card because that's still native. But yeah, it was weird. All right, last topic of this week. Did you finish Severance?
I did.
All right, give us the spoiler horn and let's dive in.
From here on out. Spoilance, Severance spoilers. Insert sound here.
Hey nerds, there's gonna be spoilers.
Yep. All right. What'd you think?
That was a good freaking show.
Fucking show, buddy. Good fucking show, buddy. Holy fuck, that last episode though.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, that. Yeah, the last episode was bonkers, but I think was the waffle party in the second to last episode or the last one?
Oh no, second to last episode.
Yeah, okay, because the last
I didn't
episode,
see that coming.
Of all of the surprising things that happened in that show,
yep, that one fucked me up.
That one, I hardly ever do this, but after the show, after I finished the series, I basically typed Severance Waffle Party into Google and I was like, what the fuck was going on there? Oh. Yeah.
And it's
because he was supposed to fuck those, right?
Well, I don't know. So here's the thing, right? And that scene right there, I think, is the perfect microcosm about why this show is so fucking good, because this show does such a great job of building tension. Yeah. And like, hey, this guy's getting the waffle party, and like you hear that at the beginning of the episode, and it's like you're slowly building to the waffle party, and then like the details of the waffle party start to emerge. Like, oh, he has to go to the, what was what was the name of that wing? It was the
Providence
Perpetuity.
Wing? Perpetuity Wing, yes, Perpetuity Wing.
Perpetuity Wing, right?
Into the house in the Perpetuity.
Into the house. Right, the childhood house that is underground on the severed floor.
Yeah.
So he has to go there.
Then there is waffles.
Yeah.
He does
so
there.
There's a big plate of waffles, and like And like everything leading up to that is just like, man, this is just like a weird place to have the waffle party. And like every other little perk that they've gotten has been like a group activity.
Yeah, he has to go. He goes by himself. Yep.
Yeah, he goes by himself, and then like he starts eating the waffles, and then like as he's eating them, like it looks like there's something on the plate, but then it goes to another scene, and it comes back, and he's finishing it, and it says for him what the plate tells him to do.
Go sit on the bed. Yeah.
Go to the master's bed, and then it's like, holy fuck!
Put on
and then
the mask.
Yeah, well, no, there's just like a cat of nine tails laying on the bed all of a sudden. Like, what the fuck? And then, yeah, it gets super weird. Like, but see, that's just like here's the other one that really messed me up. The last episode, right, where, and again, this is huge spoilers, but where the severed versions of these people, right?
During the overtime contingency. Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
the innies. The innies.
Mm-hmm.
The innies are out in the world.
Yep.
And the lady that plays like their boss, Patricia Arquette, but man, what a creepy ass character.
Oh yeah.
But she's at the same party as Mark.
Yep.
And she realizes what's going on because he slips up.
Uh-huh.
And she has the baby.
Yeah.
And she leaves. And the whole time she's driving really fast while
everyone's looking for the baby. And you're like, oh
yeah,
my God,
and you're like, oh my God. And there are cuts between her driving her little Volkswagen at a high rate of speed and taking corners quickly. And with what's the other guy's name?
Yeah.
John Turturro's character. I can't remember his name right now. He's also driving in town, and you're like, oh
are
no.
Are they gonna
crash? Yeah, are they gonna crash? Yep. Is she gonna get there in time to stop Hallie from like blowing the lid off of everything?
Yeah.
Like that right there. I always suspected that something was weird about her, and it does the flashback. Oh, it's a miracle that you're here, and it's just like, holy shit. She's a really good actress, by the way. Yeah. Everybody in that show is fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then like John Turturro gets his heart broken, and
Irving.
Yep. Irving. Yes, yep. Irving gets his heart broken.
Yeah, he's at Bert's house.
And
Bert with this fella.
Yeah, and it looks like they're packing to leave because he retired, and like, and that was weird too because I just assumed that people didn't leave, but clearly he's leaving, right? Like he's packing to go somewhere, so they must be going on vacation or something. So like clearly, like he's out, right? Yep. Meanwhile, the other big twist is the the comfort room lady.
Oh yeah.
Is basically Mark's wife, but when she leaves the severed floor, she doesn't go up, she goes down.
She goes down, yes.
Yep.
She goes down into the room that Irving's Audi keeps painting.
Yeah, right. Holy shit. And there's clearly something off about her. What was it? Send her to the testing floor, I believe was the phrase.
Yes, yeah, send her to the testing floor. Yep.
And the whole break room thing. I mean, there's just so many facets, and there's so many balls.
Psychological torture. Yeah.
Yes, there's so many balls in the air, right? And it's just like, how could they keep this all going? And yet somehow they do. And like when we first learn about the overtime contingency, where there's just a kid counting, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Is this like a flashback? Yep. And then it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm. You're supposed to count to 1,000. You promised.
Right? Yeah. Oh, it's so fucked up. But it's, oh man, I can't wait though. I mean, that is just the right kind of show for me. I don't know about you.
It was excellent. I loved it. It was so good. It was so good. It was just absolutely just spot on. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of curious about rewatching it, whether like that pays off more as you pick up some of the stuff but
I think there's probably a couple things that I saw in the first couple episodes that didn't make sense. Yeah. That I think would probably make more sense if I went back and rewatched it. But yeah, I don't know if a complete series rewatch is going to pay off like it did for Ted Lasso. But it's so good though. It's so good. What were some of the other things that were really cool? Like the finger traps and just like the melon parties and
yeah, the music dance experience or
yeah. What was it? Yeah, and then like when they go and visit Bert and like they find all the other departments and they find the baby goat
The baby.
Like,
yeah, what's up? I don't know still what's up with the baby.
What
goats.
is going on down there?
Yeah.
God, to me, it just has such big like control the video game vibes.
And like all the pictures that they're taking.
Yeah.
And then you see them in when you realize Helly is actually one of them, and she's at a gala that's celebrating her as an innie. You see all the pictures.
Well, you know what the ultimate like mind fuck is they're basically talking about how great Severance is at this big corporate party that looks suspiciously like an Apple event.
Yeah.
And it's on Apple TV. I thought that was like a very, very clever knife twisting type thing, because all the black and white pictures and like all of like the corporateness of it, right? Like it's just, God damn, dude.
Oh.
I love that show.
Yep.
Aside from the scene where she's getting her chip, I was able to watch everything.
Oh.
That whole brain surgery piece was a little tough watch.
Yeah.
It doesn't last that long, but it lasted long enough.
Mm-hmm.
God. What else? Like, what else am I forgetting? Oh, when what's his face steals that like basically airline card where it shows a guy like helicoptering or whatever.
Yeah. And that was so important. The missing that they actually went to his house.
Yeah. And like
his house. Yeah.
And the little shrine that what's her face has, his neighbor.
Yes.
To Keir.
Yes.
Keir Egan.
Yep.
And like there was so I actually went back and paused during that scene. Did you see some of the things that were in the shrine?
I saw like there's like a hospital bracelet.
There's like a hospital band, like some sort of breathing tube. Like apparently she sleeps on a hospital bed.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot just of weird stuff. That just still the whole show is weird. The whole concept is weird.
Mm-hmm.
And like you find out that the name of the town they lived in is named after the guy too, because Irving is trying to find where Bert lives, and like he has a map, and it's just it's one of those things where it's just like an offhand thing that happens where like he opens the map and the map says Keir, and it's just like, of course it does, right?
right.
Like how far does this rabbit hole go? And then like the whole subplot of the politician's wife who like basically gets severed so she could have birth, and like, God damn, dude. God damn. I can't wait. I can't wait for this next season.
I can't wait either. It's going to be good.
So good show, right? Like,
absolutely. 2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up.
4 thumbs up. You can have all our thumbs. Take all our thumbs.
All of the thumbs.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck.
It's good.
God, it's so good. All right. Well, it's that time.
It is that time. You know what? You know where to find us. We're on the internet, doingtheirbest.com. On Twitter, @doingbestpod. I'm on Twitter, @Paul Baylor. And where can we find you, Drew?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter @Pittsburgh, PITTFURG.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.